In this video, without spoilers, I will tell you about the Buldurs Gate 3 plot, game world design, progression, and how viable turn-based combat is in a world where most popular games are real-time.
But my expectations are very, very high.
As soon as BG started to gain popularity, it was clear that it has unusual gameplay when it comes to combat. And before I could even try the game, all I could think was my sad experience in the past with Death Stranding. That game was mostly about running and carrying boxes, which is as unexciting as it sounds. The beginning was interesting, I was hooked and excited, but as soon as the running back and forth started, I knew that I would not be able to finish the game.
All I want is a little fun. Is that so much to ask?
That was my biggest fear when I was watching how Buldurs Gate 3 started beating the top charts and become one of the most discussed games on the internet. I already had bad experience when the story was interesting, but despite that I wasn't able to enjoy the game, because the gameplay did not stick with me. And considering that I am not a fan of turn-based combat, I had grounds to be concerned about BG3 gameplay. Now, after I played the game,
I've lived in Buldurs Gate for years.
It turned out that I was asking myself the wrong question. Buldurs Gate 3 is not really about combat. It is a very story-driven game. There are a lot of dialogues, both with friends and enemies. There are a lot of side activities to explore, you can take different approaches, and your decisions might have a long-lasting impact.
In future, you can't just stick your hand in every strange hole you come across.
While the combat that I was mostly concerned about does not impact the gameplay too much. Some of the less important fights can be completely avoided if you can successfully persuade, intimidate, read mind, steal, or find another way to get what you want without bloodshed. The game is mostly about interacting with others, and the combat often feels like just another way of interaction. Even in the middle of enemy camp, where everyone should be hostile, you often will be able to pretend to be one of them and walk freely. No one will attack you as long as you don't attack anyone.
Avoid direct confrontation.
Which gives you a chance to talk with NPCs here and find their weaknesses or alternative ways to get what you want, or maybe even join them if your goals align.
All I want is to go home.
So, in order to know if you will like this game, the real question you should ask yourself is if you like very story-driven games. While the turn-based combat is not such a big part of the game to be a deal-breaker for most people. Sometimes I even waited for a fight to happen because there was such a cool sword on my back, and all I was doing the last hour was chatting, digging chests, reading notes, and looting vegetables. Of course, sometimes the combat is unavoidable, especially during defining moments of the game when facing the main game's protagonists. Then there is a relatively big fight with plenty of NPCs on both sides, and the fight can take quite a long time because every participant of the battle, including the player, has to wait for their turn. Quite the coincidence that it's called turn-based combat. In regular, real-time games, the fights happen very quickly. They test your reflexes and the accuracy of your mouse movements. You can experience increased heart rate or shaking hands, and the mouse becomes sweaty for some reason. While in Buldurs Gate 3, the combat is very different. It's all about planning your actions. There is no need to rush because there is no time limit. And nothing happens until you end your turn. Very convenient if you are playing with one hand, because you are eating snacks, or doing something else under the table. I don't judge.
Are you not entertained?
The only limit is the actions you can make. There are regular actions, bonus actions, reactions, and moving distance. In order to win a fight, especially at hard difficulties, you must use all available actions as effectively as possible. The game gives you plenty of situational skills and spells. You can heal, debuff, put things on fire, create ice surfaces, shove opponents off the cliff, and so on. Every class has some unique skills, and most enemies have immunities and weaknesses that also must be considered. Since I haven't played Buldurs Gate or at least D&D before, at the beginning it was quite difficult to understand how things work and how everything is calculated. Even now, after 200 hours, there are spells and classes that I haven't even tried using.
I think we should resist these powers.
The combat definitely was more complicated than what I expected from something that at first glance looked like a cheap mobile game combat.
I'm trying to focus on the positives.
The BG3 for the most part could be classified as an open world game that you can explore freely. Though at the same time it's not one massive map, but a collection of smaller maps, and sometimes, depending on story progress, you won't be able to go back to previously visited zones. The maps themselves are not very big, they are actually quite small, but they are very densely packed with activities. Even if it doesn't take a long time to travel from one end of the map to another, the journey might take a while, because every few steps you will find an NPC, puzzle, hidden loot or side quests, or even entrance to a cave, which leads to a separate small location. All these maps are different both visually and in terms of story arcs. At first, those stories might look loosely related to the main story, but as you progress further you might find new allies, get unique gear or new side quests, depending on the choices you made previously.
If we should meet again, well, we will have met again.
The character's progression is just like in most games. You level up all members of your party, which unlocks new spells or skills. And of course, just like in all games where you have many variants of armor and weapons designs, a big part of the gameplay is choosing if you want items with better stats or based on how cool they look on your character. Unfortunately, Salami does not deal a lot of damage.
It is useless.
Very cool thing about items in BG3 is that some of them have unique special effects, which opens up a lot of ways to customize your character's build depending on how creatively you can use them. Some items found early can be so good that you will keep them until endgame, while others might be so situational that it's not even worth carrying them.
I apologize for my existence.
Based on my casual gamers who is not a fan of turn-based combat experience, here is what I learned. First of all, the storyline. It is the main thing that keeps the game going. As long as you want to find out where the story leads, the game will be interesting. There are a lot of questions that appear and get answered as you play, so there is always something that keeps you hooked and motivated to go forward to find answers. Storyline, 9 out of 10. Second thing is the gameplay. I didn't start to like turn-based combat. I still prefer something where action happens in real time. But I have to admit that it felt rewarding when I was able to strategize and find creative ways to reach my goals using numerous situational tools the game provides. So gameplay is okay. I'm not the biggest fan, but it wasn't a turn off either. 5 out of 10. And the third thing is replayability. It is good, which is surprising for a story-driven game. Usually once you know the plot there is no point to play such games again, but the events in Buldurs Gate 3 have different outcomes. Every time when you succeed or fail a saving throw in dialogue, events will play out differently. Sometimes slightly differently, or sometimes it might affect the ending, and there are many different endings. At the same time, after you have played the game once, you will already know the general game's direction and main plot twists. So replayability, in my opinion, is good. 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, look for better weapons than Salami, and most importantly,
Everyone hates you. You're disgusting.
Ugly, loathsome,